Good morning and welcome to Rising. Thanks so much for tuning in. We've got a great show for you today. I believe we do, as always. Hello, Lindsay.
How you doing? I feel like we had a nice streak for this first week back of the year.
A lot of news stories.
No matter what craziness that happens in our country, we still have a peaceful vibe in this office.
It was, of course. It was a little bit of a slower news day yesterday, perhaps our first slower news day of the year, despite everything that's going on.
Well, I think when you hit the weekend with Venezuela and you come into Monday with all this breaking news, it's kind of hard to keep up that pace.
It's hard to keep up with everything going on.
Tons of stuff. Coming up on Rising, the White House sparked outrage after uploading a January 6th Capitol riot webpage. I'll be discussing that in my lens.
Plus, President Trump announced that Venezuela would be turning over between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil to the U.S.
And during an appearance on The View, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett,
my favorite.
I was just going to say that.
My girl.
Threw some shade at Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, but Crockett also said that she should be shown some grace. Look at that balance. But first, Robbie, what is on your radar?
Meet New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani's new tenant advocate, Sia Weaver. Now, Weaver's job, supposedly, is to advocate for the tenants' rights, make sure they aren't being mistreated by their landlords. But because Mamdani is a democratic socialist, his appointee is not some normal person who just wants to make sure that people aren't getting ripped off. No, Weaver is a radical opponent of the concept of private property, who has implicitly advocated the collectivization of property. In other words, the state comes in and takes your property, particularly, it seems, if you're a white person. Here's what she said in a video from several years back, well before she was picked for this job.
I think the reality is that for centuries, we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good. And we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity will require that we think about it differently. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
Yikes, a different relationship with property, their own property. My friend Brianna Wu reacts on X saying, I spent a decade working in progressive politics. They all talk like this behind the scenes. Eventually, I came to the conclusion that they were morally unfit to hold any power whatsoever. That is the sad truth. But Weaver's radical far-left agenda is perfectly welcome in the Mamdani administration. Just a few days ago, during a swearing-in ceremony, Mamdani promised to replace rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. Remember that?
We will draw this city closer together. We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. If our campaign demonstrated that the people of New York yearn for solidarity, then let this government foster it. Because no matter what you eat, how you pray, or where you come from, the words that most define us are the two we all share: New Yorkers.
The warmth of collectivism hasn't worked out in North Korea or the Soviet Union. It didn't work out in Venezuela. Maybe it'll work for us. We already know the answer, of course, even if New Yorkers who voted for this do not. Take the housing issue, for example. Mamdani and Weaver think the tenants are best served by heavy-handed government regulation when we know the opposite is true. Mamdani recently toured a rental property that was in a deplorable state, trying to make the point that this squalor is what landlords subject tenants to. But of course, the reason the landlord won't pay to fix the building is that it's rent-controlled. They wouldn't be able to charge more for a nicer property, so they don't bother. Mamdani, of course, vigorously supports rent control, even though it leads to rental shortages and other problems just like that one. As the Washington Post writes, Mamdani, Weaver, and their fellow travelers might enjoy fantasizing about a collective utopia without property rights. In reality, renters are going to be left fending for themselves as they navigate ever-dilapidating housing conditions. Yes, indeed. So we're seizing people's property now, I guess, as a result of tenants' rights.
Okay, so
we're just going to nationalize all the property. We'll centralize it under the Commissar, Chairman Mamdani, and Sia Weaver. White people especially for some reason, but she said some people of color too. I guess that was when we were still using that terminology. That's like a 2018, 2020
I don't like
sort
to
of
change all the
woke
terms every time.
excessiveness thing. I don't want that person in power at all, but here we are.
Well, I think Mamdani made his choices for different positions, and we're going to have to accept them in the same way
Based
that
on
we
who was the most
have
radically left
accepted Trump's choices of random people that he's picked to lead positions they have no experience in. But either way,
No, she has experience. I'm not saying she doesn't have experience.
No, there's several people I'm saying that we might
Yeah.
disagree with the choices, but
Too
I
much
don't mind the
experience.
choice. He can do whatever he wants. I think that what's first needs to be said is what's overstated, historically inaccurate. I've watched a lot of her speeches in the past, and she talks about the fact that we need to perhaps maybe have like inherently racist idea of owning property. I don't think that that is correct.
Right.
I think that when you understand history and you understand how the freed slaves were promised property, never given that, when you understand the Homestead Act and you understand redlining and redistricting that caused people to not have the access to certain properties, when you talk about home loans that weren't given to people of color intentionally, historically, before there were laws passed against things like that. These are all things that go into the fact that people didn't have the opportunity to have this perceived wealth across the
laws
country.
preventing black people from being allowed to own property are not examples of state, or not examples of cap. That's wrong. That's the government managing
that's
the
what I'm
economy.
saying. We as a country have grown from the place of freed slavery until right now. And so a lot of people discuss the idea of how do we atone the 40 acres and a mule idea? How do you make people of color whole when they did a lot of the work on the lands and reap no benefits or no profit? And the largest driver of wealth is owning land in this country for many people. And so people have been struggling with how to rectify that for generations. But I don't think the answer is seizing land that already exists now. But she's talking about a lot of gentrification and how a lot of people of color also end up on the short end of the stick of that in those situations. So I think she and Mamdani, again, like he hired a lot of people across the board, have to come together to figure out how to reach the goal of making it, hopefully her goal is to make it more equal for people that are less fortunate or just people of color that have no access to home ownership after all these generations of being held back, and to level the playing field. But that doesn't look like taking it away from somebody.
They
that
always
already
level
owns a
the
home.
playing field by not, but do you know what I'm saying? The people
I don't think that
steal from the people at the top to bring it down.
I don't think the word steal. The word steal doesn't work, because if you talk about historically, like why four generations might own a property and somebody worked on it for free, but it was never given any rights to the property or any profit from the property, then you could see how that would set the black person's generations behind the person that owned the property that they worked on after slavery. Like, you get all of that. I know that you understand that historically, but we're not talking about that. We're here in 2025, and we're talking about how to move forward, and that doesn't look like seizing the land from the person that now owns it, but it does look like creating opportunities for people of color to own more property. And I think that that's a noble idea to push forward, but she's going to have to figure out a better strategy than taking it away.
She wanted to take it from
she said, and also
black people too.
She said people of color. That could be everybody, Latino people, Asian people. She said the whole POC.
You owned a property in Colorado.
I still do in Colorado.
She's coming for you. She's coming for you.
But I do think that she and Mamdani, I appreciate that Mamdani within his first week has instituted some executive orders to try to hold accountable some of these slumlords that own major properties that aren't doing the work. You still cannot leave people with things like no heat or fixing items in their home.
Why they're not going to fix it? Because
no, they still should have a bare minimum. People are living in crappy conditions because people want to be cheap because it's rent control. You have a responsibility to make sure that the tenant isn't freezing in the winter, right?
I would get rid of
we
the
can
rent
say
control,
that.
and then they would.
Well,
fix
some of the
stuff.
companies, one of the biggest companies is filing bankruptcy right now to avoid all of the litigation that's coming down their way. And Mamdani's like, not so fast. You're about to make these people whole, then you could go bankrupt. No. And so I think that that's honorable.
I think we are not ignoring, but underplaying the radical extent of Mamdani's agenda and just how dangerous and psychotic his
President Trump likes him, so I guess we'll just see how that fares over time.
That's not, in my book, quite an endorsement. But coming up next, more updates in the aftermath of Nicolas Maduro's capture by American forces. We'll be right back. U.S. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has broken her silence following the operation by American forces that captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. Some people were curious to hear what the former Democrat turned Republican would have to say on the matter. She's known, of course, for being an anti-interventionist.
Following several days of silence after the raid, Gabbard took to X on Tuesday, writing, quote, "President Trump promised the American people he would secure our borders, confront narco-terrorism, dangerous drug cartels, and drug traffickers. Kudos to our servicemen and women and intelligence operators for their flawless execution of President Trump's order to deliver on his promise through Operation Absolute Resolve.
Some online sleuths went back to Gabbard's old tweets, finding several examples of her advocating against U.S. intervention in Venezuela particularly. In one post from 2019, Gabbard wrote, "The United States needs to stay out of Venezuela. Let the Venezuelan people determine their future. We don't want other countries to choose our leaders, so we have to stop trying to choose theirs."
Now, that post was made back when Gabbard was still a Democratic congresswoman representing Hawaii. She eventually left the Democratic Party in 2022 after an unsuccessful 2020 presidential campaign. In 2024, she joined the Republican Party and was nominated by President Trump as Director of National Intelligence following his reelection.
Meanwhile, Trump says that Venezuela will be handing over billions of dollars worth of oil to the U.S. in the aftermath of Maduro's capture. A post on Truth Social, he writes, "I'm pleased to announce that the interim authorities in Venezuela will be turning over between 30 and 50 million barrels of high-quality sanctioned oil to the United States of America. This oil will be sold at its market price, and that money will be controlled by me as President of the United States of America to ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the people of the United States."
But that announcement was not received well by many on the left. Writer Alex Cole saying, quote, "The open admission that he'll personally control the proceeds from seized foreign oil is mind-boggling. It's hard to imagine a clearer example of overt, out-loud corruption being treated like standard policy." And journalist David Frum says, quote, "I'm hoping this is a lie because if true, the U.S. has devolved to high-tech Somali pirates." So there's a couple things. With Tulsi Gabbard, a lot of what she said was like drugs, drugs, drugs. They're countering drugs and drug trafficking. I just want to understand what the coherent war on drugs policy is. If the president a few weeks ago pardoned the former president of Honduras for the same exact crime. No, I'm just saying it doesn't. What's the coherent policy? I'm being serious.
I don't know why
now.
that pardon was done, but
it's not coherent policy then, because you're pardoning somebody who had very similar, if not more egregious crimes and was convicted by U.S. courts of similar, if not more egregious crimes. And so if he's fighting this big war on drugs and trying to knock this out, then why would you release the man who has to do even more?
He's not in charge of Honduras. It was about taking Maduro out, who was actually in a position to affect the drug trafficking in a way that U.S. authorities did not approve.
Or it's not about that at all, because we got this other announcement now to get to the second point of 30 to 50 million barrels of sanctioned oil. And we understand that yesterday when I was talking to you, you said, I don't see how this affects the oil companies. And I reminded you that in 2024, President Trump had a nice sit down with oil executives at Mar-a-Lago where he told them and convinced them to donate $1 billion to his campaign. And obviously that comes with some type of reciprocity. And so they're looking for their reciprocity now. And you're like, I'm not seeing oil companies jump on the bandwagon here. Well, yeah, he's laying out the plan this Friday. They have a meeting with all the oil executives on Friday at the White House to lay out how they first, yes, should invest in Venezuela, and they'll see their return on investment. And so when you have somebody in a U.S. jail that you now captured because of drug charges, and we know this is more about oil, that's where the problem is. So I said either lay out the coherent drug plan in the U.S. or release Maduro from the drug charges and say this is about oil. And we're just toppling dictators that we don't like because of oil.
Well, I think the issue is I'm now a little concerned that we're not actually going to go, I can't believe I'm saying this, but far enough, because we're not doing regime change is what it looks like. The regime is being left intact. This Delcy Rodriguez person who I understand is just as vile and authoritarian, just as merciless a tyrant as Nicolas Maduro was. We're going to allow her to remain in charge because she's being a little bit savvier with her handling of Trump, and there's going to be the oil transfer, and that's going to satisfy us. But we have this unique opportunity to effectuate actual change. I'm not saying I would have done any of this in the first place, or if I was going to do it, I would have brought it before Congress. But in for a penny, in for a pound, now that we've done it, we're going to not finish the job. We're going to let the socialist tyranny persist, even while Venezuelan people the world over are celebrating the fall of Maduro. They don't like Rodriguez either. Edmundo Gonzalez or Machado. Edmundo Gonzalez is a legitimate winner of the election, so he should be the leader. Or there should be a new election, which Machado would win. I don't know why. I would, before we just take the oil and go, let's pause a minute and say, are we going to wish we hadn't gone a little bit further? If we've gone this far, that's my thought this morning.
And I think there's merit to all the people that are celebrating, and it's worth noting that people did not want Maduro in charge, but to leave it in a state where...
They don't want her in charge either.
Yeah, I'm going to say she's his right-hand woman, and she's saying one thing to the president, but going on national television in Venezuela for them and saying, release Maduro, and this is not right. We're not going to be governed by the U.S. in any way, and forcefully condemning the actions of the president. So it makes you wonder about what the next steps truly look like and how much friction will actually be there, and then how this plays out in the long term, because people don't truly have any freedom. You have to remember 80% of Venezuelans were in like economic decline or oppression, they felt like financially, because of some of the decisions made by the Maduro regime. So if she's an extension of that, how does that change the lives? And I know the president is arguing that we didn't go in there for regime change, but to leave people who are now cheering your move in the same position, but maybe even worse, because it just exaggerates what's already happening. Nothing changed. And now the U.S. is controlling their oil. We don't know how that's going to look. How does that change the economic circumstance or the livelihoods of the people there that were cheering on President Trump? That can easily turn into anger and agitation, especially when he shunned the Nobel Peace Prize winner, who a lot of people do like there, who also is looked at from a lot of people, even Senator Rick Scott in Florida, as a good leader, a good possible next step, who's criticizing the president.
We can't
He's
just
a Republican.
install her because she hasn't won an election, but there should be a new election, or they should be governed by the person who actually won the last election, who's recognized as the legitimate leader. I'm worried that we're going to miss an opportunity here. And again, I am not for regime change. I would not have gone down this path in the first place, not without explicit authorization from Congress. But given that we've already done it, we already have Maduro in custody. I don't know that leaving this person in charge is such a great plan. And I don't. If it's just about plunder, that kind of cheapens our motivations. And not to say that we're just pirates or something, but
Somali pirates, as they said.
Yeah, we shouldn't just go and rob other people.
Well, I think a couple people have asked the president over the last few days on Air Force One and in different settings about specifically an election and what he plans for Venezuela. And he's like, oh, that's not on the radar right now, basically.
Yeah, it was just about taking out Maduro is what it's increasingly sounding like from the Trump point of view, which is the only point of view that matters.
So there'll be limited or no democracy in the country that is likening the president is likening so much to the U.S. It's of the Americas, but they're still going to be operating.
Patrolling our hemisphere. It's still a rogue actor running the place.
Up next, Jasmine Crockett blasted Marjorie Taylor Greene on The View, but she also said she should be given some grace. Don't go anywhere.
Representative Jasmine Crockett says it was a bit cowardly for Marjorie Taylor Greene to resign from Congress.
Crockett joined The View on Tuesday, where the Texas Congresswoman had this message for Georgia Representative Greene. Let's watch.
I also feel like it's a bit cowardly, though, to then just quit. Because the heat that she's facing, because she's on the opposite side of him, imagine what I get. You saw that video. When I say that I get death threats, that's a very real thing. When I say that the House doesn't protect you just because the president comes after you, that's a very real thing. You get your protection, you get your detail because of your elected status in caucus. You don't get it because you necessarily have a whole lot of death threats. So, I say good luck to her.
Crockett is now running for the Senate. She had several public feuds with Greene, most famous being this viral exchange.
If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad-built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's
I'm trying to find clarification on what quality.
Chairman, motion to strike those words.
I had no idea what you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just said
you just voted to do it.
Y'all did it first, so you don't want to talk about it.
Voted to do it.
Order.
I'm trying to get clarification.
Look at calm down.
No, because this is what
like
y'all
to get
do.
through proceedings.
So I'm trying to get
Miss
clarification.
Crockett, you're not
Y'all wanna
recognized.
play
Miss
games?
Crockett.
I can't hear you with your yelling.
At the same time, however, Crockett is willing to give MTG credit for speaking out against President Trump. Let's listen.
I do want people to give her grace to the extent that, she is doing something that honestly most of the boys are too afraid to do.
Yes.
She is willing. Yeah, and I mean, listen,
Take the win.
I'll give her credit where credit is due. She is willing to call out what is wrong. Now, her motivations behind it, who knows, right? Like, you see the light, now that he don't want to be your friend, whatever. But at the end of the day, calling it out is so important.
Yeah.
So I applaud her for that.
Princess Jasmine.
I love that, Princess Jasmine.
She is not my favorite, as you know.
I hope you take the same tone of when you know, earlier this week I said, if you're very upset at somebody, treat them like you treat Jasmine Crockett, and you're like, this was wrong. That's all I was gonna say is wrong.
Yeah.
So I want you to take that same calm tone.
She can say whatever she wants. I'm not actually bothered by anything she said in this interview. To be clear, I also, even though I'm mostly sympathetic or in agreement with Marjorie Taylor Greene on a lot of things, not everything, but a lot of things, I too don't think, I'm not in love with the decision to resign from Congress. It's not a long term. The House terms are 2 years. She could just serve out the rest of her term and not run for re-election. I'm not sure why she needs to retire in the middle of it. It's not even a Senate term commitment. So I don't know that it's cowardly. I think she just, well, I don't know. I've tried to diagnose what she's going through something psychologically. She does not enjoy having become estranged from Trump, and then Congress isn't the right place for you, whatever. But
in multiple interviews, Marjorie Taylor Greene has acknowledged her contribution to toxic, or what she calls, quote, toxic politics. And so...
Well, they both did that.
Well, yeah, in that exchange that you played, you forgot to play the part where Marjorie Taylor Greene was mocking and started with Jasmine Crockett. No, yes. She started with her first saying her eyelashes. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes, is how and then Jasmine Crockett responded, because appropriately, I'm not going to play games with you.
It was unprofessional behavior from both of them. Absolutely.
Right, but it just, Marjorie Taylor Greene's important part of starting that needs to be included. Yes.
Okay.
So Marjorie Taylor Greene has added to the vitriol in multiple ways. Jasmine Crockett is one example. I mean, she's called Nancy Pelosi Gestapo, I believe, in a One America interview. She has met with the January 6th organizers multiple times prior. What do you mean? And cheered them on.
I know you've got a J6.
Yeah, we'll get into that after that.
So I'm holding my fire for that.
She also, the first transgender member of Congress, she said that she's a child predator, and that's a quote. And so these are some things that...
Did she say those things?
She said that about Sarah McBride. And so...
She is the first transgender member.
Yes, she called her a child predator, though. So a lot of her language and words have been extremely toxic. And so now, in her recent New York Times interview, said she wants to be more like God. So you can't blame Jasmine Crockett for being critical of all of a sudden you saw the light. Next on Rising, the White House is altering the real story of the January 6th Capitol attack. We're going to talk about that next in My Lens.
Welcome back to Rising. Lindsay, I believe you have a lens. What's in it?
I do have a lens today. So 5 years later, January 6th is no longer just a day in our history. It's a test of whether we're willing to tell the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable, especially when it's inconvenient. So this week, the White House marked the anniversary by launching an official webpage that flips reality on its head. It accuses former Vice President Mike Pence of, quote, cowardice and sabotage, and insists the 2020 election was stolen, and claims Trump supporters were peaceful. That framing isn't just revisionist, it's deliberate. Let's be clear about what's happening here. Upon returning to office, President Trump pardoned and commuted hundreds of January 6 defendants. He calls them, quote, patriots and hostages on the site. Others remember them as violent insurrectionists who breached the U.S. Capitol. Both things cannot be true. The page itself is telling. I mean, it's topped with large images of former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and members of the January 6th Select Committee, and claims Democrats, quote, staged the real insurrection by certifying a fraud-ridden election. Now, election officials have obviously maintained a lack of evidence over this alleged widespread voter fraud. But it goes further, blaming the United States Capitol Police for what unfolded that day, accusing officers of, quote, deliberately escalating tensions and turning a, quote, peaceful demonstration into chaos. It's really important to remember some 140 officers were injured in the riot that caused extensive damage to the Capitol building. Officer Brian Sicknick was assaulted by rioters, suffered strokes, and died the day after the attack, per USCP. 4 others later died by suicide. But the White House claims, that same website claims, that no law enforcement officers lost their lives. The suicide highlighted the severe emotional and psychological trauma that law enforcement officers experienced during and after the riot. The death of Officer Jeffrey Smith, in particular, was officially ruled a line of duty death by the District of Columbia's Retirement Board, as a head injury he sustained during the riot was deemed the, quote, sole and direct cause of his death. This is not a disagreement over politics. This is a disagreement over facts. The White House also took direct aim at Mike Pence for refusing to overturn the election results. Meanwhile, the president continues to respond in a petty fashion. In a lengthy, meandering speech to House Republicans, he falsely claimed the January 6th Select Committee and the media never reported his call for supporters to act peacefully.
Do you know that the Unselect Committee didn't report it, that I said those words? Do you know that the news never reported the words walk or march peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol? Do you know they never reported it? It's a scandal.
That's not true. They did. And they also mentioned that he used the word fight or fighting more than 20 times, including telling the crowd to fight like hell. In the years since the Capitol breach, some Republicans who once condemned the attack have softened their language. But here's the thing. They know what they saw. They know what happened. History doesn't need spin. It needs honesty. And after 5 years later, wrong is still wrong.
I agree that history needs honesty, and we should correct and call out people who spread lies about what happened on that day. I'm going to do that now. Hillary Clinton tweeted this on January 6th of this year, the other day. 5 years ago today, Donald Trump urged his supporters to attack Congress and the Capitol over a proven lie. Donald Trump did not urge his supporters to attack anyone. He told them to march. He used evocative language, and then there was a riot. You can hold him morally responsible for what happened. You can say it's his fault in some sort of psychological sense. That's fine. I hold him to blame as well. He did not urge his supporters to attack the Capitol. He did not instruct them to do so. What happened at the Capitol was a spontaneous riot. The crowd was inflamed. Again, you can say that his actions were wrong, and certainly it was based on a lie about the winner of the election, and I have called that out. And I think the impeachment proceedings were the correct way, not a criminal trial, but the impeachment was the right way to deal with it. But he did not, the people who stormed this building, who broke the windows, who fought with the police, who defaced public property are responsible for their own actions, and it was correct to bring them to justice. And I wouldn't have pardoned anyone who engaged in any sort of violent crime, or I guess I might have commuted them. I'm a criminal justice reformer. I don't think people need to languish in prison if they're not a threat to their community, but I certainly would have brought charges. But it is not correct to say, as Hillary Clinton did, he urged them to attack. That's a lie as well.
Hillary Clinton ran for president, didn't win, and Hillary Clinton is currently not holding a public government office. President Trump is, and his administration decided. No, I accept that she's overstating and using overstating language. I accept that. But I'm also asking you to look at what our president put up on January 6th. He called Mike Pence a coward. He said no police officers died. His website is full of inaccuracies. He says the election was stolen. This is the president of our country that knows that a lot of people that saw him pardon all the January 6th criminals are inflamed by what he continues to say. And he's posting things that are just untrue on a government website 5 years later, still starting nonsense when he knows that this is inaccurate. You can't really believe that he thinks that the election was still stolen.
I absolutely think.
Okay, well, I think that's ridiculous, and
I think
facts
it's incorrect,
are
but I
facts.
think he believes it.
Okay, but it's just the facts. Don't facts matter? This is incorrect information over our government websites. It's like he has to be
He's a
held to
sore
some
loser
kind
like
of
every
standard.
person who lose the election. John Kerry thought he won
Every
the
person
election.
doesn't do
Hillary
this.
Clinton thought she'd won the election in 2016.
And imagine
she said it was a stolen election because of Russian malfeasance and Trump was an illegitimate president.
Now imagine
It's
if
not
she won a
crime
couple
to be
years
sore
later
loser
and then
until
put up a
this.
website saying, I really won. Like, no, this is not
Hillary Clinton went on
accurate.
TV interview after interview, said, it was illegitimate. Russia, he cheated, that whole thing. No one treated this like it was a crime. It was just par for the course until Donald Trump's behavior. Then him persisting in thinking he had actually won was some kind of grand criminal conspiracy.
And people that align with his thought process then committed criminal acts. And so he should be able to, yes, and he pardoned all of them. So he should be able to separate the two and say, you know what, this wasn't correct. I shouldn't have pardoned those people. But even still, I'm not going to exacerbate this whole thing and keep posting lies on the government website so that those same people that were inflamed could keep feeling like justice was denied to them because the election was stolen. Like, this is silly.
This
is nonsensical.
Government websites are always full of lies because they're government websites.
And so you're putting
That's
no
where I go
onus of
to find the lies.
responsibility on the administration.
I'm not putting no
And
onus
also,
on
I would say,
I think
don't
I've
you
been
want
very
better
clear
from-
that I put tremendous responsibility on Donald Trump for what happened on that day. What happened on that day was very bad. It was very embarrassing for our nation. The people who did those things behaved reprehensibly. I was there. I witnessed it. I saw it happen in real time. I was horrified by the destruction of public property, just as I was horrified when the Black Lives Matter people came to D.C. and smashed every window in town and threatened people and fought with the police officers in exactly the same way. It was exactly the same thing. It was people acting out at the conclusion of a very, very awful year, the pandemic, the protests, everything. I'm not saying this to excuse any of their behavior. People lost their freaking minds in real time. I watched it over and over and over again. They should have been held accountable. That's not an excuse for anyone. They were held accountable. And again, I would not have, signed a pardon and make it so like it had never happened for any of those people. Some of those people did get much more egregiously long sentences than I thought were warranted. Enrique Tarrio, leader of the Proud Boys, was sentenced in accordance with having essentially planned a terrorist event. He wasn't even at the riot, which again I say is spontaneous. There was no plan to attack the Capitol. It just happened. The idea that he had organized well in advance some terrorist plot to occupy the government is ridiculous, but he got like 20 years. He wasn't even there. That I would have absolutely commuted that sentence. I wouldn't have pardoned him, but I would have commuted the sentence. I found that ridiculous.
Well, the worst case scenario is that we're now celebrating these people on the government website and calling them heroes, calling them patriots, but also condescending
They're
and
not
belittling.
heroes. Absolutely.
This is what, and belittling
were,
the former vice president of our country, as well as trying to downplay the fact that people lost their lives that day.
That
and
is
our
shameful.
public
Mike Pence
property
did the right thing, and yes, it is shameful to pretend otherwise.
I just want better for.
It is shameful to pretend
the
that they were heroes. They were duped into throwing away their freedom for the stupidest cause ever. Absolutely, I have no disagreement there. But it was part and parcel with a lot of bad behavior that continued in this city for that year. Next up, the Trump administration is pulling more than $10 billion in funding from Democratic-led states. We'll tell you why. Stay with us. The Trump administration is once again targeting blue states, this time yanking more than $10 billion in social services and child care funding.
The reason for the move? Concerns that the benefits were being fraudulently dispersed to undocumented immigrants. First reported by the New York Post, the Department of Health and Human Services has frozen funding from the Child Care Development Fund, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Program, and the Social Services Block Grant Program for 5 Democrat-led states. Those include California, Colorado, Illinois, Minnesota, and New York. The governors of all 5 states were also asked to hand over comprehensive lists of who those funds went to between 2019 and last year.
Comes on the heels of the Minnesota fraud scandal, which has now expanded to Minnesota's child care system, following the release of a YouTube documentary last week that details that alleged fraud. In response, leaders in those Democrat-controlled states have pushed back. At a press conference yesterday, New York Governor Kathy Hochul called the move vindictive, and she also said, quote, "We'll be having a litigation strategy. We'll fight this with every fiber of our being because our kids should not be political pawns. Meanwhile, Trump took it a step further in California, indicating that his administration would launch a fraud investigation into the state, similar to Minnesota. Trump posted to Truth Social, in part, California, under Governor Gavin Newsom, is more corrupt than Minnesota. If that's possible, the fraud investigation of California has begun.
But Governor Newsom's press office responded in his own special way on social media, writing, same people who, quote, found $250 billion in fake fraud have also confirmed California is home to unicorns, leprechauns, and a permanent cure to chronic erectile dysfunction. Huge. So far, the president has not gone into detail about who is investigating California or what specific allegations they would even be looking into. But I guess we shall see, right?
Fraud ends here, Lindsay. No more welfare payments where we can't understand what it is even going to, and it is being pilfered from the public. So I am in support of more. I want more funding being frozen.
Okay, just to Democratic states.
Give the people back. Let's cut their taxes. Let's give the money back to who paid for it. That's what I say.
So if you really want to cut waste and fraud, I'm always down with trying to be more efficient and getting the bad actors out of our system. But when you just target Democratic states, specifically the states that kind of shunned,
that's where the fraud is.
No, specifically the states that have shunned the president's immigration policies and some other things, now he's being very vindictive, and this looks like another act of pettiness that doesn't get us anywhere because, like Governor Hochul pointed out, and several other governors I'm sure will follow suit, they're all going to take him to court, and this is just going to waste time and money because we know that he's just acting in pettiness as opposed to
wasting money to stop illegal immigrants from getting access to welfare.
No, but it's Minnesota. People pointed out the egregious allegations, just like we did during the pandemic, and know that fraud ran rampant during the entire pandemic. Now, I want to point out the fact that the president, if he wants to really cut down on fraud and he only wants to look at Democratic states, then he's not being reasonable. He should look at Ohio. Let's talk about Ohio.
Let's
the states. Let's look at Ohio. So let's talk.
I would
to
like a total
Governor,
shutdown on welfare spending until
So why
we know
doesn't he
what's
look at
going
Ohio?
on.
Governor Mike DeWine is a Republican governor, and the Job and Family Services reported over $1 billion in fraudulent pandemic unemployment claims that went out to people there. That's $1 billion, and another $4.8 billion in overpayments in those claims. So why doesn't he start with Ohio as well and add that right to the list? And then yes, he can be strong on fraud, but he's skipping over Ohio, one of the biggest states for fraud during the pandemic. He's starting in 2019 when most states were in disarray because we were in one of the most unprecedented times of our history.
Like an excuse.
No, but I'm saying there was fraud throughout the country.
It was a pandemic, so you don't have responsibility for
the federal government.
finances.
The federal government is the one who laxed a lot of the policies, making fraud even more possible. Let's say from 2019 to 2021. So in that time, who was responsible? Why is he not looking at the federal government as opposed to states? And so that would require a little bit of looking in the mirror. And so that's why he doesn't want to do that. So we need to make sure we're looking at all states, and I'm happy to cut fraud. But if you're only going to Democratic states, now you're wasting time and money. You're going to go to court.
We can go
and
to
people
Ohio
have
too.
much
That's
better
fine.
ways to.
And even from a partisan standpoint, there's Democrats in red states too.
For sure.
So,
for sure. But
legal immigrants there too.
yeah, but he can't just justify coming at the same people that he's probably mad about the Supreme Court's decision about how he can move forward with the National Guard in these states. And so now he's vindictive and retaliating.
About to even matter at the Supreme Court. You know, what I'm hearing is that Friday the tariff decision is going to come down, and I think it's going to be a loss. That's what I'm hoping for, obviously, because I don't like the tariffs, and I don't think it's constitutional under his authority, but we'll see what the Supreme Court says. That's going to be Friday, but it is expected that they're going to strike down his tariffs.
And I know Costco is looking forward to getting all their money back because they're going to move full force with that lawsuit of saying, well, our prices went higher because of your tariffs. Your tariffs are illegal, so administration, please pay us back. And a lot of people are going to look at...
Go to Costco for some wine.
We were talking about
that this morning.
So, okay,
Costco
honestly...
wine versus Trader Joe's.
Yes, I take too much time in these stores, big box or small box, whatever you call them, Trader Joe's, Costco, and I walk around and talk to the employees about what the wine.
You talk to the employees?
Yeah, like yesterday I had a nice person in Trader Joe's walk me around and explain the notes in the wine. They were like, oh yes, the one wine called Petiole, I believe. It's like a red blend. And we talked about how vanilla notes were in there and how it's really light. It's good for snacking. I wanted to snack. And I'm watching a show called The Hunting Wives to go completely on a tangent right now because I'm interviewing some of the people that created it coming up. And so I felt like I should get fully tapped
I
in
have
with my wine.
never.
That was my night.
I'm a rugged individual, so I have never, ever, 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 ever once asked for assistance at the grocery store.
Really?
Even if I don't know where something is and I can't find it, then I don't buy it.
I feel like I'm not an East Coaster in that way. Like I overly chat with people in random settings, like the store or the grocery store.
Not only do I not do it, it makes me uncomfortable when other people do it.
Really? Like, okay, so what
We're
about
not going shopping together.
what about bars? That's the time to chat, right?
Yeah, that's a chatty time.
But anywhere that's not specifically a social.
Just the grocery store. It's a sign of weakness to admit that you don't know where the thing is or don't know what you're buying.
But isn't it more efficient if somebody just points you out and say, "Oh, go to aisle 2, go over there"?
Absolutely, I just won't do it.
Really?
Refuse to do it.
That's a little bit of ego, Robbie. We got to work on
I think
that.
I'm not saying it's a flaw of mine certainly, but I won't do it. Won't do it. Okay, we won't be shopping together. That's neither here nor there.
And this goes back to the tariffs issue. If that doesn't go in the president's favor, I think that he's going to be very upset. But I also think that his long-term strategy, which I thought had noble pieces to it, like the idea that you want to take the dependency away from foreign nations, was noble. But the fact that it was not executed and prices went up for Americans, and they're looking at all that happened in the last year, all for nothing, is going to be hard to justify.
Could save Trump from himself because we get these tariffs gone. We'll bring prices down. We'll improve the economy. His approval rating will go up again. This is the one thing, honestly, that could save the Republicans from a catastrophic loss in the midterm. Ironically, would be for the Supreme Court to thwart this one policy. Not the rest of the agenda, but this one.
We'll see how it has to do with how Democrats then take the information that we all know very clearly that he proposed tariffs that didn't work and were now illegal, that would have raised prices dramatically. And do you want the same person to continue, or the same party to continue leading you forward?
Or do you want the party of welfare fraud leading you forward?
Guess we'll have to just make those type of decisions. Up next, social media influencers and OnlyFans creators are dominating the U.S. extraordinary artist visas. We'll be right back after this.
Well, a substantial number of U.S. visas reserved for artists of extraordinary ability are reportedly going to OnlyFans creators and other social media influencers.
Now, according to the Financial Times, influencers who have successfully applied for an O-1B visa have exploded since the COVID-19 pandemic. O-1 visas granted between 2014 and 2024 have increased by 50%, while the total number of non-immigrant visas like the H-1B increased by 10%. O-1 visas include both O-1B arts visas and O-1AS for remarkable abilities in business, science, athletics, or education.
Now, some immigration attorneys say that influencers now make up more than half of their clientele, and they believe these clients are not just beneficial from the financial perspective, but it's also easy to quantify their exceptional ability by citing their likes and subscriber data.
Now, critics of this shift worry that traditional artists would be at a loss. With attention-based metrics, people are meeting the criteria with or without any exceptional talent.
New York-based attorney Sherwin Abachi, the founder of Abachi Law, says that is a structural shift, not a niche development. What looks like a spike in influencer filings may be signaling a broader shift in how opportunity is allocated. This is interesting. I'm sure the OnlyFans headline is what caused this to get some social media attention. That makes it sound like we're allowing to immigrate all sorts of like porn people or something, but but this is more for like influencers who have, who do dance videos or makeup tutorials, that class of people who get brand deals, and also many of them also probably have OnlyFans account. It's not pornographic for everyone on the thing. The attorneys are saying this is bad, basically, that now we're judging artistic ability or like skill in some objective way, but why is that bad? It's hard to say. Prior it was impossible to, oh, you're a really good musician, so you should qualify for this visa. It's very subjective. Now there's an objective metric. How many followers do you have? Do you have a brand deal, etc.? Seems fine. What's the problem?
I think that, and I was reading the article, and one of the lawyers in the article said, because they've worked on cases like this, on bringing people in these O-1B visas, they're like, I worked with people like Yoko Ono. So now I'm talking about somebody who is on, and some of them are on OnlyFans.
This category was created because of John Lennon of the Beatles, that they wanted to deport him for his anti-war views, and then I think this was created to allow him to stay in the country.
And so while I'm happy about the way that
Maybe it wasn't
younger
created for
people
that reason.
are,
It was
but
he
he
took
has a lot to do with it. I'm happy that the fact that young people are able to get to direct to consumer in all the ways that they are via social media, whether they're influencers on OnlyFans or on Instagram or on X like you are.
Yeah.
Would you call yourself an influencer? Sure. Okay, so yeah.
We're no better than them.
I'm not trying to be better.
No,
so
I'm not saying you're
okay.
We're journalists. They're No. We are all in the same business of competing against each other for your attention. The people watching on social media, on YouTube, on whatever platform, we are all competing to monetize your attention.
Right.
We're journalists or influencers or...
But you could see how people would look at this and say, okay, when you compare it to like John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and then you step back and see what the world has become because of like this influencer culture. So like the amount of followers and likes means like, that doesn't mean that they have something like of note in the creative, artistic space. Some people really just have a lot of likes and followers because they say dumb stuff. Or they say, it's just, that. Like there's a variety of people out there, right? And so we're just like, okay, numbers don't always equate to meaning that we need more of that in the US, right? So we don't need a ton of people who are just blowing up online but saying lies, or blowing up online
I don't...
blowing up online, or I
don't think I'm pro-immigration, and I don't think our country is really made any worse off by having more little K-pop bands or whatever it is, or makeup tutorials or unboxing video people. I mean, maybe I don't even know why these people even need to be in the U.S. necessarily, but because it's all online content. But there's no reason to turn them away that I can think of.
Well, I
think
think
they're spreading misinformation.
No, I think a lot of people that are like a little bit anti-immigration might be against this, right? Wouldn't this be exactly like this is a lot of
anti-immigration people are always finding new excuses. They're doing
find some
all
way-
sorts of goal shifting, like, oh, it's about cultural concerns, terrorism. Okay, well then why are you mad about all the Mexican people coming in who are doing jobs? Well, where they're stealing jobs. Oh, so they work too hard. The problem with Somalis is they're ripping us off and not working hard enough. The problem with the Mexicans is they work too hard and take too many jobs. It's
all over the place.
This is why I can't take the anti.
But you've been consistent in that if you're contributing to the economy, come on.
Yeah.
You say that both for people who work at a lot of the farm work and up to the top, the tier where you're running.
You know my immigration policy: rich, smart, or hot.
What about the effective?
You can come to the U.S.
People who are getting all the jobs done for the big.
That's smart. I get hardworking too.
Okay.
But, that's the main thing.
The top
we ask
three.
Questions.
The top three.
If you don't satisfy any of those, we ask questions. One of those three, we don't ask questions. You can come.
All right.
That does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you later.